Hello and welcome back to the sentence series. This is Paloma, the English tutor with COS again, assuming that you've seen the first video of the sentence series where we discussed independent and dependent clauses. Today we'll be discussing punctuation and how that relates to clauses. So with lone independent clauses, that is just an independent clause on its own in a sentence, there isn't usually any required punctuation, aside from the period at the end of the sentence and the capitalization of the first letter of the sentence, or any proper nouns, which is implied and I'm sure you are aware of. So we will have to be discussing conjunctions a lot in this video. Now, it's important to note that conjunctions are also used within individual clauses or phrases themselves when coordinating words. This will be addressed in a future video because there's so many different types of conjunctions that they don't all apply to specifically subordinate or coordinating conjunctions when discussing clauses and punctuation, therefore. So what are subordinating and coordinating conjunctions? A subordinating conjunction, or as we referred to them in the last video as dependent marker words, are used in sentences with relative dependent and independent clauses. However, coordinating conjunctions are used in sentences with relative independent clauses. So let's talk about these coordinating conjunctions with our independent clauses. It's really important to connect your independent clauses with proper punctuation, because especially if you just use a comma, that's considered a comma splice, and it's one of the most common sentence errors. It's also important to be aware of fused sentences, which just means that you don't use punctuation at all to join your relative independent clauses. Coordinating conjunction words also require commas, and these can be and, but, so, yet, nor, for, and or. For example, I tried your soup and I loved it. Because you have the coordinating conjunction word and, you have to add in that comma before it. Or how about this other example? I love to exercise outside, but I am too tired to go for a walk. Because you have but, the coordinating conjunction but, you have to include that comma before it. So comma and is something that is often misunderstood, or people just add that into sentences when they feel like it's right, but I think it's important to go over this since it's so common. So comma and, as we just mentioned, is used when joining two independent clauses. It's so important to be sure to double check this because oftentimes I'll see people using and as a subordinate conjunction between a dependent and an independent clause when it must be between two independent clauses. The comma and must be used together to avoid a comma splice. So if you just had the comma, that would be a comma splice. However, when clauses are connected and concise, there is no comma necessary. So it would be grammatically correct, or punctually correct, to just have and without the comma. This is because adding a comma to concise clauses can add an awkward pause. So let's take a look at this. With a sentence that doesn't have concise clauses that are being joined with comma and, it sounds okay. I wrote too many notes during my chemistry class and I developed carpal tunnel in my wrist. Whereas with these concise independent clauses, it would add a weird awkward space. Fred is from Weed and he loves to live there. But we would read it as Fred is from Weed and he loves to live there, or that's how we would speak it, so it makes sense to exclude that comma. Now let's discuss colons in clauses. When joining independent clauses, colons are used when there is a greater emphasis on the second clause. For example, that lettuce is not organic, it has been sprayed with toxic chemicals. These are two independent clauses, and the first independent clause almost leads up add some suspense to that second punch of that independent clause. Semicolons. Semicolons are one of the most misused and misunderstood forms of punctuation that I see in papers, even from professors sometimes or from peers. Semicolons are used to fuse independent clauses that have equal emphasis. So this contrasts with the colon, because with the colon, the second one has more emphasis. However, with these independent clauses in this example, they both have the same emphasis, right? I love bacon, Kiki loves sausage. With coordinating conjunctions like moreover and therefore, which are used to bridge the second clause, these require semicolons. So again, it's two independent clauses, except for here you're adding on a coordinating conjunction. So you want to have I am allergic to wheat, semicolon, therefore, that's your coordinating conjunction, comma, I cannot eat toast. So it's also important to remember that comma there. So this coordinating conjunction is introducing an independent clause, so you must have that comma. You could even just have that second half after the semicolon as its own sentence, and you would still need to keep that comma after therefore. So now let's get into subordinating conjunctions between independent and dependent clauses. When subordinating conjunctions are used, commas should be implemented. For example, before I walked home, I bought groceries. Before I walked home, that's a dependent clause that has that subordinating conjunction or dependent marker word like we mentioned in the last video. And then I bought groceries. So this is a dependent clause before an independent clause. So you have to have a comma there. When a set of relative independent and dependent clauses are fused together for equal emphasis, a semicolon is used. Let's move on to this second example. When a set of relative independent and dependent clauses, meaning similar to this first example with the dependent and independent clause connected with that comma, when these are fused together for equal emphasis, a semicolon is used. So since my friends are happy, I am happy, semicolon. Since my family feels loved, I am joyful, period. Now you use subordinating conjunctions to join independent and dependent clauses. For example, these could be as, for, since, because, etc. If the independent clause follows the dependent clause, you should use a comma, just like we explained. So just to refresh, as an example, since I'm so tired, comma, I have to go to sleep. However, you could also write this as I have to go to sleep since I'm so tired without including that comma. Now, a big thank you to the Purdue OWL Writing Lab for supplementing this video. This is a great resource. It's always important to remember to cite your sources. The Purdue Writing Lab, it's online, it's easy to access, and this is what we suggest to our students here at the College of the Siskiyou's Academic Success Center Writing Lab. It is so helpful with any questions that you have. If you don't have immediate access to a tutor or someone that can help you, definitely check this website out. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you shortly.